Hi friends, it's me, Eric the Wizard. My apologies for the strange angle. It is super windy today and I had my tripod up higher and it kept blowing over. So we're filming from down here now. Let's see if the tree bugs get any quieter. Basically today I wanted to talk about something interesting when you blend a bunch of different ancient magic systems together. Because for me, when I say, I'm into magic or I study magic, I mean that very generally. I've been interested in this sort of thing for over a decade. I found out about Wicca when I was 9, playing on my family computer, and since then I've only just researched and gotten into more things. And I get into things really cyclically. So I might be really into herbalism for a few months, and that's all I'll study for a few months, and then I just don't study it for a few years. And a year later, I get really into it for a few months. And in the years I'm not studying it, I'm still implementing what I have learned, but I'm not studying new things. But it's not just herbalism. I'm like that with different methods of divination, with different world mythologies, stuff like that. So over the years, I've built up this really mixed practice. And I'd say that's about typical from the broader tradition I'm part of. A lot of my personal stuff is drawn from Western Ceremonial Magic, and Western Ceremonial Magic will take astrology from the Babylonians, and it'll combine it with both Greek and Egyptian mythology. And then it'll combine that with different classic European iconography and tools, and it'll combine that with just whatever new culture it encounters, and it becomes this hodgepodge. So one of these areas where you see two different things I'm studying just completely clash, or in one way not clash, which I'll get to, is astrology. So in astrology, there are 12 signs, obviously. Each sign, there are 12 zodiac signs. Each zodiac sign takes up about a month. But the 4 cardinal signs, when the sun enters into one of those cardinal signs, that's when one of our seasons here on Earth starts. So when the sun enters into Aries, that's when spring starts. When the sun enters into Cancer, that's when summer starts. When the sun enters into Libra, that's when autumn starts. And when the sun enters into Capricorn, that's when winter starts. And this is significant to me because each of those zodiac signs, they all have traits. In addition to all being cardinal, they actually all are one of the 4 classical elements. Aries is fire, Cancer is water, Libra is air, and Capricorn is earth. And what's interesting about that is in Western Ceremonial Magic, the 4 directions are corresponded with 4 magical tools, and the 4 seasons, and the 4 elements. So East is the first direction you start with. I'm pointing east right now. I guess if you're not with me, it just looks like I'm pointing behind me. I'm pointing east right now. That's connected with spring and the air, and in my tradition, the sword. South is connected with summer and fire, and in my tradition, the wand, but more specifically in my tradition, no tool and just the body, which I'll get to that. West is associated with autumn and water and the chalice, and north is associated with the stone, or the shield, or the cloth. A lot of weirdness in my tradition, actually, and winter, and earth. And what's frustrating to me, because I'm blending 2 traditions here together, is that it doesn't match up between astrology and my Western Ceremonial Magic tradition, where astrology would say Aries, spring, fire, where my tradition would say air. Astrology would say, summer, Cancer, water, where mine would say fire. Astrology would say, Libra, Libra, autumn, air, where mine would say water. But then it matches up here. Astrology would say, Capricorn, winter, earth, and I would say north, north, winter, earth. So only one of those matches up. Only north, only earth, only winter matches. So I want to talk about why I believe that is the case, which I know it's kind of just a coincidence that you mesh these 2 systems together and one happens to match up, but I do see significance in this coincidence. I see significance in the matching up. And for me, it has to do with the planet Saturn, which is a really important planet to me. I also want to talk about one pair that doesn't match, which is the first one, spring, air, east, and fire, Aries, spring. So I'm going to start with the Saturn things. That's the fun, controversial one. So while I still have people's attention, let's see if I can bait, black cube cultists into commenting on this. But basically, I think that all the winter stuff matches up because of Saturn. People act like Saturn is super scary. They're like, Saturn is death, Saturn is the underworld, Saturn's the Grim Reaper, whatever. What's funny is everything people say is scary about Saturn is actually just an externalization of stuff we experience here on Earth. We don't have the Earth as one of our planets in astrology, because obviously we are on the Earth, so the Earth would be in the center where we are. But if we were on another planet and Earth was exterior, I believe Earth would take on the role that Saturn has. Because the idea that Saturn is like physical limitations, boundaries, edges, well, that's, existing here in material reality on Earth. There's physical limitations and edges to whatever. My body has an edge. This book has an edge. There's a division between me and my staff. The idea that Saturn is time. It's like, well, yeah, we're subject to time here on this Earth. The seasons, which are very pronounced, very highlighted on this Earth, are a reminder of constant death and rebirth, of constant time passing. And then, obviously, yes, our planet Earth is separate from, elemental Earth, but Earth in the north is seen as the underworld, and it's because, when we bury our dead, we physically bury them under the earth, under the ground. So the north is the ancestors, and the underworld, and death, and, so people fearmonger Saturn, and they act like Saturn is some scary, horrifying thing, but Saturn is literally just an externalized Earth. So that's why it makes sense to me that the North winter Earth thing lines up with Capricorn kicking off winter. Because, Capricorn is an Earth element. Capricorn is ruled by Saturn. And to me, Saturn and winter are both death, the underworld, whatever, but not in a scary way. That's just a fact of life, If I deny that death is going to be part of my life, I'm too much of a coward to just address, realities. So, whatever. So I personally believe that lines up because of Saturn, because I think Saturn is just like a higher octave of Earth, or just an externalized Earth, which people can fight me on that. The next one I wanted to talk about is how air and fire, sorry, I've TMJ, air and fire, they aren't the same, but they're actually commonly confused in my tradition, because my tradition is just 8 different traditions in a trench coat, so I'm actually, for this, I'm going to bring up tarot. I love tarot, yay! So, in tarot, we have, the major arcana, and then of the minor arcana, we have 2 suits, or we have 4 suits. 2 of them are the swords and the wands. And what's interesting is, tarot started off as just an Italian playing card game with a lot of the religious iconography in it stemmed from religious satire, which is interesting because that puts tarot in the same category as the Book of Revelation, where it's like, this is political satire, but now it is seen as a very, religious and sacred thing. I know people who are you have to keep tarot cards in this kind of cloth, and you have to talk about them in this way, and blah, 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 blah. And they treat it like it's some sacred thing, just like I know people who say, you can't stack another book on top of your Bible, you can't... both of these have become elevated to a point where it's someone's idol, pretty much. But what's interesting is people can't really agree on what elements these suits represent. Because again, there's 4, just like there's 4 seasons, 4 elements, whatever. The 4 suits, people will try to connect them to one of the 4 elements. And what's interesting is Wicca, which I'm not a Wiccan. I'm not saying any of this to bag on Wicca, but I'm speaking about it as an outsider. So if you're a Wiccan, if I misrepresent anything y'all believe, feel free to leave a comment and correct me. Wiccans will attribute fire to the swords, and they'll attribute air to the wands. And that's actually reflected in their ritual tools. So Wiccans usually don't have a sword. Some of them do, but a lot of them will have, I think it's pronounced athame, I don't know how to pronounce it. I learned that word by reading when I was 9, and I've never heard it said out loud, ever. I'm being 100% serious. I have once or twice, I just don't remember it. But that that ritual implement, which is like a dagger, and some of them will have 2. They'll have a black one used for cutting cords and fruit and whatever, and a white one used for carving sigils into candles, and then they'll have a curved knife called a bowline for cutting herbs. which I like that. That's very Saturnian. I love scythes. But anyway, they'll attribute these sword derivatives, these blades, these daggers, ritual daggers, they'll attribute those to fire. And they'll attribute their wands, which some of them also have staves and staves, but at a bare minimum, a lot of them have wands. They'll attribute those wands to air, which kind of makes sense, because you can like swish a wand through the air, and I can kind of associate blades with fire, because like you need fire to forge a blade, and if you cut yourself with a blade, it stings like fire. Like, I get it, and that's what I started off with when I was like 9. But if you go to other traditions, it's the exact opposite, where some people will have tarot be one thing. They'll say, oh yeah, it's these elements in tarot, but it's these opposite elements in ceremonial practice. But some people will even change the elements in tarot, where they'll say fire, swords are, they'll say swords are air, and they'll say that wands are fire. And they'll say that wands are fire because fire can burn wood, and swords are air because I guess you swing a sword through the air. Also, a lot of stuff actually from the Bible. You'll have, the sword is the word. You'll see the sword coming out of beings' mouths in Revelation, because words come out of our mouth. Words are air. Very mercurial. It's a whole thing. But you can already see there's a lot of confusion. And for me personally, it's kind of both, where like the wand cards in tarot are all about communication, ideas, information. So I'd say that's very air-based. And a lot of the sword ones are tragedy, warfare, whatever. I'd say it's very fire-based, blood. But it's not very concrete, and it can be both, because the tradition, like I'm really in Aquaria, and they'll say swords are air, they'll say swords are air, wands are fire, but you can make a case either way. And you can also say the wands are very clearly a phallus. That's vitality, that's male virility, that's fire, so swords are also a phallus. So like, I don't know where we're going with this. So it's like these two, when they say Aries is spring and fire, but east is spring and air. It's like, yeah, well, fire and air, they're the same. None of this matters. And I'm just gonna, for just an aside, I just want to share, which I know I'm probably making this video way more confusing than it needs to be, but I'm just vlogging about my life at this point. The tradition I'm in, you don't operate with swords or a staff or anything. You kind of use your like finger for directing energy, and you use your whole body. So your finger's like the wand, and your whole body is the staff. Because yes, in like most magical traditions, they'll say your body is the synthesis of all 4 or 5 elements. And yes, I believe that's true. But we do a lot of meditations with the inner fire, also with the externalized outer fire, which again goes to like Saturn being externalized Earth, and they're one and the same. But then you use your inner fire to like transport yourself and do other things, and you use that inner fire in your body without using an externalized tool, other than like candles. So my body is the staff. My staff is for personal non-Aquarius stuff, actually. But anyway, this confusion goes even further. Goes further than like Western ceremonial magic as just like a loose construct / my specific tradition of Aquaria versus Wicca, which is a religion that's like a derivative of Western ceremonial magic, but they're not the same, because one is a religion and the other one's like a bunch of secret men's clubs that have all since broken down. And the funny thing is, no matter which you're in, you're probably an individual, you're probably not actually in an organized group. Like if you're a Wiccan, you probably did like self-initiation, like individual Wicca, and if you're a ceremonial magician, you're probably using like the Internet Archive scan of the black brick, and you're not actually meeting with the group. So either way, you're just an individual doing stuff, right? But I digress. What I'm getting at is it goes beyond like divisions between like someone's religion and like my silly, I like playing on my computer, I'm a ceremonial magician thing. And it goes further into just older Western ceremonial magic texts. So if you look at the Greater Key of Solomon, in my opinion, you see interesting play between fire and air when you look at how they break down the angels of the days of the week. Because they say, Sunday is the sun, that's fire, and they'll say that the archangel of Sunday is Raphael, and they'll say that the angel of Sunday is Michael. Where if you look at Wednesday, they'll say the Archangel of Wednesday is Michael, and the Angel of Wednesday is Raphael. Which to me, this is all just stupid, because I associate Michael with Mars and with Tuesday, not with Sunday and fire. I do associate Raphael with Wednesday, but like all of this is just like not at all related to my experiences. So I read this and I'm like, what? This is just confusing. Where's Tuesday? Where's Mars? But it's again, it's like Raphael and Michael are this paired set where they kind of swap back and forth. I definitely see Raphael as air, as mercurial. I personally see Michael as Mars and as fire, but if you want to say he's solar and fire, that's fine. I consider Christ to be solar. Some people think Michael and Christ are the same. Both Jehovah's Witnesses and Mormons believe that, so that's more air fire confusion, or this I guess is Mars solar confusion. But it's like, with water, there's a very clear thing with water. And with earth, there's a very clear thing with earth. As soon as you get to air and fire, I'm like, what are you talking about? I do not understand what you're getting at. There's all these weird coincidences where they just swap places more than like John Dee and Edward Kelly's wives. Where I'm going with all this is that it's just fuck. And that's why my initial plan for my staff, I used to have this like unverified personal gnosis. I used to think that the staff was actually this like ancient ancestor to both the sword and the wand, where I thought the fact that it's like about your height and it has like a hilt handle thing and it's long, that eventually became the sword with the introduction of the blade, and then the staff just shrunk to become the wand. So it's like it evolved into two different things, which is why initially, like 2 or 3 years ago when I planned this thing, I wanted to burn in the sign for Mercury, the sign for the Sun, the sign for Mars, and then both the fire and air zodiac signs. I wanted my staff to be both, and I thought, well, I had a dagger at the time that I could use for one or the other, and then I have a wand made of maple wood that I could use for one or the other, which this is lindenwood. And now, as my craft has changed, I have a sword and a dagger that are both 100% air. I do not use my maple wand, I just use my finger. But for some fire workings that I don't want to use my body, mainly because I connect fire to the immune system, to allergies, to homeostasis, to whatever. I have a lot of chronic health conditions where there are times where it is not safe to channel energy through my body. So this can be a duplicate of my body that I can channel energy through when I don't want to shoot a bunch of energy through my body and wake up with like evil swollen lymph nodes in my neck and armpit in like insane pain. So this is now fire for like non-Queria fire stuff, because I've had minor lymph node problems with Queria rituals, but overall they're very balanced and very much good for the safety of the body. I haven't had a lot of chronic health issues with that. So where I'm going with this is I initially thought that the staff is related to like the stang. So it's like mercurial, but also it can be burned, so it's like fire. And then it slowly evolved into both the sword / dagger and the wand. I no longer believe that. Just like I used to go with the Wiccan elemental attributions, and now I don't. So I've grown out of both these beliefs. I still respect them, they're just not my own beliefs. But along with Jehovah's Witness and Mormon stuff and tarot and whatever, at this point we're merging, right? We're merging Christianity, Italian playing cards, astrology, so like Chaldean, Babylonian stuff, and then like Greek ideas of the elements and the directions. We're merging all these cultures, and like fire and air are just inseparable. So when I look at East, Spring, Fire, Air, Aries, I'm like, I do not care. But the other two just fall apart. Like the fire, water thing for summer, I don't see any common ground there. I don't see any significance to that. The autumn, water, or air thing, I don't see any significance. I see extreme significance in Saturn being Earth, and Saturn, Earth, North, Winter, all coming together. Saturn is Earth too. I'm going to be real with y'all. It's external Earth. And I also see great significance in the fire-air confusion of the East, because it's both. It's fire and it's air. Let's be real. Like, fire and air have to go together. In my personal opinion, when you look at all these traditions, they're buddies. They have to go together. The other two, I'm like, I see zero significance in this. This is just stupid. And I know that's a dumb complaint about astrology. It's like, oh, this ancient tradition doesn't hold up when I try to blend it with like 80 other traditions from other time periods and regions. Isn't that stupid? It's like, No, I expect the 80 things you put in a blender don't go together. That being said, it's still just a bummer, because 2 of them really are significant to me. So the fact that the other 2 aren't, I'm just like, blah. If you see any significance in how the other 2 go together, I'd absolutely love to hear you explain it in the comments. If you have anything you'd like to just add or comment on in the significance I see of the North and of the East, let me know. This is something that I've pondered quite a bit. I fill my stupid little composition book with like astrological ramblings. I hope this makes some of my like staff stuff make sense. And also, like, what's your take on the whole tarot fire and air thing? I don't know. I'd love to hear from you. But yeah. Let me know what you think about all of this. I'm aware I just dumped a lot, but I just wanted to share, like, Earth is Saturn, fire is air, magic is always complicated, and if you try to simplify it, you lose nuance. I hope you all have a great day, and best of luck on wherever your path takes you, because I know it can get crazy out there. I love you all. God loves you too.